Welcome to our next episode of Limitless Ed X. I am joined by the innovative,
Jeanette Easton from Refound Education.
and I am Andrea Harris from Bloom at Home Learning. And today we are discussing money smarts, how alternative education teaches what schools don't. This is actually such a hot topic right now, Jeanette, because we do record these episodes a little bit early. So we have some an extra backup over the holiday season, especially. But right now it was just, do you want to share what's in the news?
Oh, we were talking about how Freeland had resigned, and the anticipated deficit was 40 billion, and it's 61 billion. And we were discussing that her replacement should be a child who had more common sense of basic
Literally,
mathematical functions.
I know. This flows perfectly into our episode tonight because we were just discussing a child could do better. I actually, you know what, Jeanette, regardless of people's political opinions and left-leaning or right-leaning, obviously, I would think every single Canadian, including children, understand that this was not a good thing for Canada, right? Like it was not a good move for the finance minister to put us this deep. And I know it's not just her, so I will preface that. But in terms of like how it looks for us, who's going to be like, yeah, bravo, they're doing a great job.
And yeah, at this point, it's just money laundering
I think it's a
experiment.
burning dumpster fire. And like you said, it's embarrassing, right? To
And it- there is no financial literacy. It is actually a serious problem. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he had talked about this decades ago, and he was not wrong. His teachings still hold weight today, and our systems are for workers and not for entrepreneurs or people that want to be disruptor types or um, they are not entrepreneurial and they don't understand. We need to make serious changes. And the only way we're going to make serious changes is if we do it in the next generation. But we need the educators to embrace these changes, become increasingly more financially literate, so they can trickle these skills forward to the kids, and therefore they can take the next steps and we can improve every generation so that we don't end up in situations like this in the future.
definitely. Let's break it down. Like at the bottom line is kids are not being taught finances in school. They are not being taught investing. They are not being taught at the very basic level taxes in I don't know, I haven't looked globally, but I know in both Canada and the US that learning topic is abysmal in the school system. You're not taught how to do your own taxes. Um, and yes, people can pick up, TurboTax or whatever and do it themselves and go to H&R Block. But in terms of like the value, every single citizen of the country pays taxes when they're adults. And to have that lacking in the curriculum and not explained, I think if we were taught as children, it would be very, very easy to understand and segue into adulthood if you had a little bit of that sense of literacy in finances every single year, but they totally skip over it in terms of investing or stocks or the stock market or interest or debt or credit cards, anything like that is totally skipped over. I know they have, and teachers listening are going to be like, oh, Andrea, they have added that in over the last few years, more so, but it is absolutely not as robust as society requires it to be. There are people who are still completely oblivious to finances and even how to pay bills properly, how to save, how to budget. And that is reflected in our federal government.
And I think parents need and educators need to start with the most basic budgeting.
Mhm.
I know some parents are reserved about, giving maybe their kids Or maybe they're not able, and that's okay too, and some are, but they don't want to pay for chores, day-to-day chores, or they don't want to give them oh my gosh, brain fart,
An allowance?
an allowance.
Okay.
The word was on the tip of my brain. But what you can do is give them a task that you would pay for or you would outsource and give them that. Maybe it's lawn care or whatever, but
Mhm.
start with that, a small amount, and have them start with budgeting and look at some expenses, set some short-term, long-term savings goals. So maybe they want to buy a bike. How much are they going to set aside every time to achieve that bike? So it's like that marshmallow test. And then their day-to-day expenses, like how much are they going to save and then invest, and show them the trajectory from budgeting to investing, and show them the process of how to get to that point in small ways and then amplify as they get older. It's a bit of a process, takes time, but there's a lot of things that need to be broken down. And even, for example, a great comparison between public schools. So a lot of public schools have been doing, markets themselves,
Hmm.
right? So I'm talking to some parents and some educators who have done it, and it's
Like
pretty much,
kidpreneur type things.
yeah. So when you do it in a public school, it's, hey, we're raising money for, um, sick kids or whatever, and,
Yeah,
bring in an item, make something, and they're going to sell it, and this is how much they should sell it for. And that's like pretty much the extent of the conversation. In an alternative education space, and I know when I had my school before I had sold it, um, we broke it down even further. So whatever they were creating for the market, you break it down into smaller parts. So, okay, we're doing, you know, this is what we're making. This is how much each piece costs. This is how much per unit. This is the breakdown. This is how much time I spent creating it. So we looked at a few elements about monetization. What number made sense according to the time invested and the materials used. Um, it's a bigger conversation when educators come from some kind of entrepreneurial experience.
absolutely. I think you are spot on. And this is so popular now to see social media influencers selling like business ideas when they've never actually run a business. So I think it's really valuable what alternative education schools have done, where they bring in entrepreneurs, they bring in successful business owners who can help teach the kids onto like the steps on how to do it. I think this is one area that is huge for outshining the school system. You just even need to look on examples posted all the time in alternative school settings. There's ones in the States where kids have the responsibility to run their own food truck. And yes, obviously the resources would be very different, the public school system. But in terms of what you just said, like they can create their own dishes that they want to sell, or a few of them, and then they tally up all the ingredients and they see how much it costs, and then they provide their cost analysis basis and their profits and learn how to take and accept money. It's a huge process, but I think it is so valuable. And that's just one example. Food trucks is just one. I know, I think there was a school in the States, in the South somewhere, where the kids were running their own B&B, Airbnb. And like in terms of, also, before I forget, another one is real estate ownership too. Like just even teaching kids the benefits of all different sorts of ways to earn an income, maybe earn a passive income, and increase your savings, because no one ever got rich from a savings account. So in terms of like investing, real estate, all of those examples are huge that you can make whole courses for kids on, and so they understand the inner workings of what's current in society.
Some of the alternative schools actually in the network, like Sylvia had done kind of a work backwards kind of thing
Mhm.
where the kids looked at different houses that they would want to purchase, and they looked at different price points, and they talked about what it meant to get a mortgage, how much do you have to make annually to achieve that goal, what's the down payment, what are the terms, and they mathematically worked out so that the kids had a realistic perspective of what they had to make and what the outcome would be in terms of real estate. But that can apply to, other goals
Yeah.
as well. But those are really great conversations, because then it's how much do I get taxed? What's my gross versus net? And people underestimate the intelligence of children.
Oh my goodness, I was just about to say. And to interrupt you too, I know that we just had Sylvia on, but for those listeners who are just tuning into this episode and hadn't heard the previous one, Sylvia is the founder of Agora Prep. So that's who you're speaking about.
Yes, absolutely. And then I saw, well, we had organized a large scale market at a corporate event before, and we saw small children teaching their parents how to use a payment terminal.
Mhm.
It was amazing. One girl was 8 years old teaching her mom how to do it.
I could believe it.
Oh, it was incredible. Another parent they had started, the teenagers, it was teenage girls. The mom had started, she's like, I was just shopping around. I saw these hot chocolate melts. The ones with the circle, that's hot
Yeah.
chocolate, and then you
Yeah.
put it in warm milk and it melts and all
Yeah.
kinds of yummy goodies inside. So she had just bought it as like a Valentine's gift for one of her daughters, and she turned it into a business. And they had done all the financial literacy around it. And the funny thing is, her daughter started bringing in her friends, which means her friends started doing it as well. And they became more entrepreneurial. So it's interesting to see the ripple effect of positivity just from something as small as giving a child space to learn and, just support.
Absolutely. The confidence that they build. I am sure everyone has heard of that story about the boy in the States. I think he was suspended. But he was like, I think it was an inner city school, and he was running like a candy operation out of the bathroom. But we laugh, but it evolved so much so that he was taking orders. He would take orders every Thursday night, get all the candy, bring it in on the Friday, and he had people working for him, and he was making several $100s every week with this little candy business. And the school, of course, caught on and, they squashed his dreams. But it just goes to show you that kids are so innovative. We do not give them credit. So I love that you shared that, because definitely parents do not. And another story that could be very current right now is the kids who were interested in Bitcoin 10 years ago when it first started to develop. There were a lot of kids that dove into that and knew so much more than their parents. And if you let your child invest in Bitcoin 10 years ago, I can't even imagine what that would be worth today after it just bumped up, skyrocketed. So,
And I love that you said that, because you also want to give them space to fail.
mhm,
It's so much easier to lose less money at a younger age than it is to lose more money at an older age. There are always life lessons with every loss, but minimizing them is the ideal. But when children start to really focus, and like, they'll make smarter choices, smarter than us.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
that's the goal.
And I love how you also mentioned getting them involved in different ways to start earning money as well. Like I know lots of boys my age growing up, and this is stereotypical, but yeah, it tends to be more girls who babysit and boys who do like landscaping, but the ones who go door to door and gather clients, especially for elderly neighbors, and do their landscaping and get paid weekly for that. If you teach them how to properly invest their money instead of just putting it in a savings account or spending it, or even doing like a percentage towards savings and a percentage towards like you can spend and then some that you want to invest. I think it's a really beneficial lesson for them to learn really early on. Like you said, if you lose $100 and you're 12, it's probably not that big a deal. But if you're investing on a more large scale business when you are older and you're losing a lot more money, it can be probably a less fun learning lesson than you would like. So I think that is also the huge benefit of starting early with concepts that we think are complex, but that kids actually really catch on to.
And tying the financial and the digital also. Like I know there's
Mhm.
kid card allowance cards, kind of my dough, like my DOH, and you can automate, like parents can automate the allowance and actually simplifies it. Seems pretty cool. I think I'll try that when my kids are a bit older. But I like the idea too because I saw an Instagram post. Oh dear Lord. There was a young girl who was adamant. Her mom's like, okay, you have to pay. You have your first credit card. Now you have to pay the credit card. And the girl's like, no, I'm not paying for it twice. She's like, you're paying for it once. You have to pay for it now. And she didn't understand. And she was a late teenager. And I was thinking, good golly, why have you not had that conversation?
I'm
That
sorry, I don't understand. You mean she paid for it using a credit card? Like, say she went to store and bought clothes and she paid for it on a credit card and thought that that was paying for it?
so she thought that was paying for it. And then
Oh,
she didn't understand. She didn't realize that paying the bill, she thought she was paying for it twice. And her mom's like, no, you're paying for it once.
yeah.
So, like, she didn't understand the concept of borrowed money versus money that you actually paid towards the debt that you acquired. So, hopefully, that mom cut her credit card until some further foundational knowledge was put in place.
You
Um,
know what, though, that is a really good point, and I will mention, and for anyone with daughters, they know like they can spend money, a ton of money on clothes. So it is beneficial. Not that I am against having them spend money and starting to learn what they really like and being able to spend on things they love, but in terms of like the value and even like the background of the company and being more ethically aware, I think are huge components of being financially literate as well. And just recognizing if you're buying, this is another big one too. If you're Canadian and you're buying from a US website, just like even the exchange rate, just exploring globally the differences in the value of money and explaining that to kids, because I think it is a lot easier to do when they're younger and they're like, oh, okay, as opposed to when they're older and they don't understand, late teens, and they just not
it's
interested.
Yeah, and you'll have twice the job because they learn
Mhm.
faster when they're younger and they need to know about interest rates and exchange rates and taxes, and they need to learn all the things. And it's easier to teach them when they are just in increments. Like Tuttle Twins even has
Mhm.
episodes that makes it in very child friendly language. There's a lot of books that could support, your child on their journey to becoming more financially literate.
I just ordered the Tuttle Twins pack. They had a huge Black Friday sale, and so I got a big box of them to be able to test out for clients and being able to recommend. And they have some excellent ones on the economy that go into the history of it and that I didn't even know. So very, very applicable, awesome resources out there. I know there's a lady on Instagram, and I didn't research this before we did this podcast, but she was like an ex-CIA person for finances, and she creates courses for financial literacy for kids. Like it's absolutely amazing. So, in terms of what's out there that you can supplement for alternative learning, and even parents who are still in the school system, but they recognize there's huge gaps, you can research this yourself or look to a professional like Jeanette or I that can have some really good recommendations in this area. And there's some awesome resources that you can supplement for what kids are interested in.
Yeah. Jillian Education for math,
Yeah.
because she's entrepreneurial. She has some really great um, lessons around that as well, and can provide some guidance around like the education component.
Mhm.
Um, And of
You're
course,
a natural learner too. Sorry to interrupt you. On
natural
Instagram
learner. Yeah.
is amazing. And she just had an incredible post last week on the actual percentage of kids that use certain types of algebra and certain advanced math is less than 10% versus people who need to learn taxes is 100%. So it really calls into question why they are learning certain things in certain grades. Like, for example, I don't know if we've chatted about before, in grade 10 or 10th grade in Canada, in Ontario, the curriculum calls for, I don't know, they don't have advanced anymore, but the 10th grade math class calls for like advanced functions. And even for my brother-in-law, who was a math representative in the school board, was like, yeah, this is like NASA level math that really, really is tricky for a lot of students. And you don't really use it unless you're going into very specific things in university. So why add that to the roster of things that kids need to learn for the next 3 years in high school, as opposed to something very applicable like budgeting that every child needs?
And quite frankly, financial literacy is the like money is the foundation of all industries and business.
Hmm.
It is like you need to know, regardless what industry you're in, if you want to be entrepreneurial or be in leadership, you need to have, those foundational skills. So even if your kid doesn't know what they want to do, they need to learn at some point how to monetize whatever they want to do. Um,
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And, just look in terms of the number one issues in couples as well is usually money, like different spending habits of partners. And it's actually very astounding, but very common to have adults who have no clue about money at all. And really, in terms of this is another good one. Wow, I should invent this one. But in terms of protecting yourself before marriage with financials, that would be a really good topic too for kids to learn. Not in terms of like being negative or anything like that, but the family court system really banks on like separation and divorce and splitting finances. And it would be a really great thing to know about trusts as kids get older and different ways to shelter and protect your money and protect your assets as well. And that just isn't in terms of just a marriage, but in terms of like protecting it from liability purposes as well. So I think there's so many different topics you can go into. Look at HGTV. Those shows are so popular because of the money and value you can get out of real estate investments and how lucrative it is to be able to buy something when you're really young. And people are probably going, Andrea, the price of houses right now, but just in terms of something really small and how that can actually build your equity over time.
oh, for sure. And even like as an adult, I've done budgets before. I've done like all kinds of things. But I did, and I've worked with financial people, but I saw this like new little sheet layout and it had 8 different ways to look at the numbers to like to set financial goals and it had 8 different structures of savings and investing and all kinds of things. And so I downloaded it super cheap. And I'm going to kind of try it as a new tool to see how, because 8 new ways, I don't know all the ways. I'm no
Absolutely.
financial guru.
I
Um,
love trying out things when you find them. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see like how but then anything that you learn, if you become more diligent when it comes to that, you can trickle that forward to your children. So, especially as people dive into the new year and are focusing on a lot of their goals and financial strain in the economy is a big topic.
Absolutely. And not to say, I always like to preface by saying money is not everything. Money cannot buy you happiness. However, money is a fantastic tool for buying yourself freedom. And what does every single person on earth want is time freedom. You want freedom with your time to be able to do more of the things that you enjoy and less of the things that you don't enjoy. That's like basic level humanity, I think. So money and the flexibility with money allows you to do that. There is no one on earth who's working three jobs and just making ends meet who is overjoyed with their financial situation. And I think even in terms of teaching children and teens basic things like paying your bills on time or paying your credit card bill, um, a certain percentage each month and how that affects your credit rating, and then how your credit rating then affects your ability to get mortgages. All of those things are interconnected. And interestingly enough, just knowing the system from the States now too, they're completely different. So it's very helpful to be able to learn your different countries' process with credit ratings and with building up your credit, because it does take time. So if kids are able to gain that knowledge early on and know the tricks and tips of the trade, I think it makes it a lot easier to be able to access certain things when they get older and they need them, like mortgages or like loans or like line of credits, or if they own their own business, just even getting business loans for that type of thing.
Oh, definitely. And that's a different beast when you're approaching like as they grow, if when you have a successful like or a venture that has the potential to reach some real growth, then you're sitting down with investors, you're having these, conversations, and you want to be able to position yourself from a place of a strong, at least foundational knowledge of, so you know where to go, what to do, where to get that knowledge. And even when you're, operating in abundance, how do you contribute to the world? How, like, people use charities, they use, like you said, trusts, life insurance. There's so many ways that you can actually contribute to your own financial abundance and freedom,
Mhm.
and support people in the community and raise the community around you. And I
Oh, I
think,
love that aspect. Just even giving back, right?
oh,
How you can actually, and this is another key point about knowing your finances and being comfortable in a place that you are, you're able to give more to causes that you really love. And you're able to recognize the value of cash instead of credit cards. And I think that's a huge piece moving into the areas that we are headed with your social footprint and, no more cash, but we always like to value the things that you can tangibly see, and being able to keep those circulating in communities and to buying local, which is so important versus overseas.
and even seeing, the more I mingle with people that are very inspirational in terms of where they are in terms of abundance, the way they even view debt is,
Mhm.
as a positive thing. And to see the shift in perspective and to see how they utilize debt to their benefit is really interesting. And that comes after these foundational skills. But the sooner your child starts seeing this, I've seen investors as young as 20 years old that are like inspirational.
Absolutely. I was just going to say too, and then they can become investors themselves, right? And another key point I think alternative education really can hit home with is investing in yourself and the money you invest in yourself in terms of like education or training or coursework or, whatever you're interested in, real estate, then that can be so much more beneficial than like your goal of owning a $100,000 car or just really thinking from a perspective of what can this get me at 20 years old or 25 years old or a teenager, and how can this also be a building block or a stepping stone to something bigger in the future.
Oh, definitely. Because what they have in place, even our like supposed quote unquote legacy systems, because they've been around for so long, but it shouldn't be our legacy because it's very disappointing. But essentially, they're constantly looking these systems for handouts from the taxpayers. Now, taxpayers don't have any more to give. Our great, 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 great grandchildren have no more to give. We need to create systems that actually create financial abundance and then have it, exchange with the community and that exchange between community, like you said, supporting local, and keeping the money flowing into, in and around the community among each other. There's so much more value and you create more abundance that way instead of just handout, handout, handout. Like parents within alternative education spaces are consciously spending their money. The educators in those programs, they are entrepreneurs. They are consciously spending their money. And everyone has to feed their family. They all have their goals and that kind of thing. But it's just a more intense awareness. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Are you saying the government and the school boards are not consciously spending their money or our money?
It's maybe in Switzerland, but not.
I'm
Um,
kidding. I
oh,
think
it's just it is embarrassing. I don't know how people sleep at night doing what they're doing. It's just siphoning the money and like
definitely.
there needs to be progress. There needs to be a shift. There needs to be change.
Well, I think people need to stop complaining and take action
Hmm.
and actually do something. And I see the way I took action was I'm not playing that game. I'm not being a part of that system anymore. It's corrupt. There's so many different avenues we've talked about that we're not in alignment. But if something's not in alignment, why are you going to continue to participate in it? It's like an abusive relationship. If you know that and I'm not downplaying domestic violence at all. But in terms of if somebody is being abused, what would your advice be to them? Is to leave that relationship. It's not safe, it's not aligned, it's going to affect your health eventually. I think a lot of people need to start taking action in 2025 and seeing that there are solutions out there. And if there aren't, pave the way. You can develop them. There's a lot of really awesome people out there. And in terms of financial literacy, I think the key piece that we can take home today is that empowering students and kids and teens to know more about money will give them the confidence instead of the anxiety around their own finances in the future. And I think that's a huge piece. I get anxiety when I don't know something. So if somebody were to sit down and teach you when you're younger, these are the steps, these are the things that you need to learn, these are the things that are really important moving forward in society, then kids will feel so much more confident over the years of building that knowledge as opposed to coming out of the school system not having any clue.
And just, some final thoughts as well that teach a fisherman how to fish and they will feed themselves for a lifetime. So walk your kids through the process. How do I find a good accountant? How do I know if they're a good accountant? How do I find the resources I need to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching them how to find their resources when they have a question, and it starts with a Google search, um, and take it from there. And it
Yeah.
starts as easy as budgeting and then take it from there. There's so much information. And if you guys want any more, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Take care.